My name is Roseleen Murphy and I'm an inspector with the Health and Safety Authority. I work in the Chemical Business Unit of the HSA. This presentation will give you, as small business owners and managers, practical advice on how to identify hazards in the workplace posed by chemicals. Chemicals are present in every workplace in Ireland. They're contained in different products and in different forms, adhesives and paints. They can be present in fuels like oils and gases. Waste materials such as insulation and batteries will also contain dangerous chemicals. Processes in your workplace may generate chemicals such as dusts or fumes, and employees working in the vicinity of these may be at considerable risk of injury or ill health as a result of exposure to these chemicals. So why should we manage chemicals in the workplace? Well, quite simply, chemicals can be hazardous. Examples will include chemicals like flour dust or wood dust. These are irritants and can cause problems with the respiratory system. Acids, for example, can cause serious burns and are corrosive. Other chemicals can cause toxic or harmful effects. When chemicals are known to be dangerous, they must be categorized according to that danger. And the symbols must be present to indicate to the user that there is a danger posed by these chemicals. While not all chemicals in the workplace are dangerous, we do know that some cause illnesses such as dermatitis or asthma, and some can even cause occupational cancer. Therefore, they do present a very significant hazard in your workplace, and they must be managed like any other workplace hazard. So how can you go about managing chemicals in your workplace? Well, before you begin, you must identify the chemicals that are present in your workplace. It might be useful to begin with a list, walk around your workplace, involve your employees perhaps, as they'll be aware of what chemicals are in your premises. Take note of what chemicals you have, maybe how much you have of them, where they're stored and how you're using them. You can look then at the hazards that they may pose, and this information will be present on labels and safety data sheets if you have been supplied. In addition, you need to look at the processes that you are carrying out in your work, because these may generate hazardous chemicals such as fumes or dust, and your employees may be in contact with them. So just a few points to note on labels and safety data sheets. Together, these make up the most important tools for assessing the hazard of chemicals in your workplace. Any chemical that is categorized as dangerous must contain a label which must display a hazard warning symbol to indicate to you as the user that there is a danger. If you are supplied with a dangerous chemical, then your supplier must also provide you with a safety data sheet, and this will provide you with more detailed information on the safe use, storage and disposal of chemicals in your workplace. Exposure simply means how you or your employees may come in contact with the chemical. If you are working with dangerous chemicals, then you do need to assess how this exposure might happen. Quite simply, who's using the chemical? Are any vulnerable employees using it? For instance, any young persons, or maybe someone who has an existing condition that could be exacerbated by using a chemical. How is the chemical being used? How is contact likely? Are your employees using it directly, or could they be splashed by using the chemical? Is contact through breathing in fumes or dusts generated by a process? Exposure is also a measure of how often or for how long a chemical is in use by a person. If I'm exposed for long periods of time, I'm more likely to suffer the ill effects. Is there a chance of accidental contact with your employees who may not be actually working with the chemical? So now we know that we have hazards in the workplace and you are able to assess those who may be exposed. You need to control this exposure and you need to control the hazard. So in the first instance, can you eliminate the hazard? Ask yourself, can you do without this chemical? If that's the case, then your hazard has disappeared. If you can't eliminate it, you can't do without the chemical in your workplace, can you substitute it with a less hazardous chemical? If it isn't possible to eliminate or substitute the chemical from your workplace, you will have to take account of the next steps in order to control the risk. Can you engineer out the risk? For example, if you are working with chemicals that produce fumes or dusts, can you install local exhaust ventilation or extraction systems which will remove the chemical from the employee? Procedural controls. These are often very effective means of controlling hazard in combination with either engineering or substitution controls. Procedural controls includes possibly prohibiting an activity related to a chemical or limiting it to those that have been sufficiently trained in handling the chemicals safely. And finally, personal protective equipment. As with every workplace hazard, PPE should only be used in combination with other controls. So, in summary then of how to manage chemicals safely, these are the top tips. You must identify chemicals in your workplace, walk around and make a list. Identify the hazardous ones and pay particular attention to these. You must read labels. You must look at safety data sheets in order to get the appropriate information on how to manage safely. You have to consider who may come into contact with the chemicals and for how long. And finally, apply appropriate controls in order to reduce the risk of injury to you and your employees, and always manage chemicals safely. And my call to action would be for all small businesses to identify hazardous chemicals in their workplace and to manage these safely.